I was working as an unqualified art teacher at a secondary school and as an SEN assistant, and I did a bit of cover supervising, and I loved it, but there was a lot of politics within the school. This was after my degree. I went to the school to do some work experience, and then they offered me a job on the spot, so I took it, but because I wasn't really qualified, I didn't have a leg to stand on. Like, I wasn't part of the union, and my time was quite difficult at the school actually. It meant a lot to me teaching and stuff. I failed my maths as well at school, but I've just recently passed it, so I've now got the option if I want to teach, to go and train to become an art teacher. I've learnt a lot, definitely. It's definitely added to my character. So at this time I was wondering whether teaching was for me. I was putting a lot of time into doing the maths GCSE, and I'd spend a good 3 hours a week revising, paying for the fees and wondering if there was something else that I would enjoy more. Something that was maybe more fulfilling. Actually, shall we walk? That I should use my skills a bit more. And I've always had an interest in working at St Andrews. And a chap that I used to live with, he was a nurse at St Andrews. And me nan. She also worked at St Andrews in the 1980s. And my uncle also worked here in the 90s. So a real family connection. And a real interest to see what it was like to work here. My mum didn't want me to work at St Andrews because of the risks involved, and she was quite aware of what I would encounter. I applied to work on the women's service, not knowing where I would be placed. I arrived half an hour late to my interview because I sat in the main building waiting for somebody to come and collect me. The interview was so quick. It happened in like 10 minutes. But in the end, it seemed to go really, really well actually. And I got offered the ward that I worked on now, which is fantastic, and I really enjoy it. It's fantastic. It's really nice to be with, to work alongside therapists, the nursing staff, to help create structure in their lives. I can't see myself sitting in an office and not making work. I want to be on my feet and be quite practical instead. I definitely want something to complement my art practice, and not some boring, dull, kind of like a 9-to-5 job. These ladies need my support and need someone who is strong and is consistent. This job has helped me to kind of rationalise. I'm running some art sessions on the ward, which is really interesting. I made it clear in my interview that I wanted to do some art with them, with the ladies, and try to see what it's like for them, because I've taught teenagers, but I'd not taught adults, and certainly not taught women with extreme complex needs. And actually, they are pretty damn good at it. You have to be really, really flexible, and you have to adapt to literally gauge it as it goes along. You have a range of abilities. You have from really capable and some that need, a bit more help, a bit more of a prompt. My role has certainly adapted already, and within my own artwork, I like to do lots and lots of different things. And I've just realised that in all the jobs I've had, I certainly had more than one role to do. I think it's because I like to try and keep busy, and I think I've actually got quite a short attention span. I always remember my tutors on my art degree saying you need to slow down and focus on one thing. And I'd be like, no, it's cool, I've got this. I just crack on with it really. This is a really nice spot up here. You been on the grounds before? It's really nice. I love being outside. Because I'm in rehab, a lot of the ladies, we encourage them to exercise, And we have a support and exercise therapist who runs sessions, who helps them with that. There's like a couch to 5k. And I did that with some of the ladies. And they'd run on the spot on this path. And then we'd run a bit more. It was good. They were all in their jogging bottoms. And I was just in my work uniform. I really enjoyed it. I love going out with them and having a cup of tea. Just doing really normal stuff. And actually just getting to know them. And them getting to know me. It's nice to see them happy and smile. It's not all negative. I know what they are going through is really, really tough. And they're going through a lot of torment. But for a split second their mind perhaps isn't racing for once. And they're just having a cup of tea. This is a nice bit as well. I love going for walks. I'll often find myself just staring at the trees. It's huge. It used to be a golf course. It's odd because it's quite exclusive golf. And a lot, if not all our patients, wouldn't connect to playing golf. It's just not relevant to them. I think perhaps it's right they got rid of it. There's negatives to everything, of course. It's really hard getting the threats and trying to get through to them, to reach out to them. And they'd be like, nope. I like it because you never know what you're going to walk into. It's very unpredictable. And I like that. And I like how each day changes. And I like how there is structure, but it's not like rigid. There is always room for movement there. And I think what St Andrews does really well, they've put on loads of workshops and sessions around the site. Like there's a woodwork class, there's ceramics, there's work bridge, there's all sorts. A lot of the ladies that I work with, they go off and use it and they come back and bring loads of fantastic stuff. Like there's this one lady who's made this really, really great sensory box. It's fantastic. And she like cut up the wood, stuck it together. It's shiny, it's tactile. It's just great. And she's done that off her own back. With the help from the staff in woodwork, she's done a fantastic job. It's brilliant. And there's some really talented people here. So I could be stacking shelves in Asda. And I might not necessarily have the long hours. And working 12 hours can be quite tough. You work 12-hour shifts here. 2 days off, then 3 days working, and so on. I do quite like the random days. I try to then use my art studio at least 1 day a week. I think that what you're doing is actually quite challenging because you're asking staff why and how you have come to work here, and I think that can be quite a loaded thing, really. We all have these life experiences that have shaped us, and it's contributed to what we are doing today. And I think discussing it in a place where the patients are your main concern, and you come second, of course. And when you're talking about yourself, it kind of doesn't feel right. And they give so much of themselves to us, you know. And we know their histories, and that's a part of the caring, so that we can understand them. But they often don't know our history and what they've seen and experienced. And I think it's quite a difficult topic to talk about here because you don't want to, overcomplicate it and make it more complex. You need those boundaries and you need to keep everybody safe. It would be great if you did these walks with patients. It would be extremely beneficial, I think. They would certainly guide the walk, and if they didn't want to go somewhere for some reason, they'd certainly tell you why. We really encourage them to have independence and to speak up, but in the right way. Not to shout and not to swear. It'd be really good for you to work on the wards. That's where the patients have a coffee or a cup of tea. The family or friends will come along and they can hang out with them and get off the ward. We build up transitionally. That's the library there. It's moved now, and I used to try to get in there as much as possible. I don't think many people use the library. I only remember seeing 2 people at the most when I was in there. I'm relatively new to the charity. I joined just over a year ago, and one of the things that really attracted me, especially in the first 3 to 6 months, that made me think I'd made the right choice, that there was a sense of community spirit here, whether between wards or buildings or within the current pathway structure. It's really nice to feel that, and it does resonate with me that there are whole families here, a sort of generational commitment. And my family, most of them, are still back in Canada, so it does make me quite envious. There's couples who have met here. It's just a really nice aspect because we're such a large organisation. It may not feel like one big community, but it really is. It's what a community is made up from. Pockets of different people, different interests, and different focuses, but it's family groups and friend groups. And if you think about it, it's the definition of a community. I remember when I've been living in England now for about 20 years. And when I first moved over, I used to get lost a lot completely by accident. Roundabouts were new and so were roads with bends in them and things like that. I could never tell which way I was going. I actually came into the main gate here and I was lost. I didn't know where I was, and I saw the main building. I was just absolutely in awe of it. To think the main building of the charity is 180 years old. That's actually older than Canada, which just celebrated its 150th year in July. So older than a country. And that for me is what attracted me to England in the first place. All the history. I remember as a child on holiday we went to one of the castles, and across the street was a row of terrace houses. And I thought, wow, I'll just live across the road from the castle, as you do. It just seems so non-eventful for people here. But if you look around, all the heritage that's here, and even the trees, God knows how old they are. They're markers of memory. Look at the tree outside the chapel. There's events that have happened around that tree, and people write memory cards. And I think it was Easter time when they put wishes on it, and they hung them in the tree. So even a tree is very much a part of the makeup of the charity. Our logo is a tree. In fact, I learned this week that the official St Andrew's tree is a Cedrus libani, which is a cedar of Lebanon. If we go that way, outside the Priory Cottage, I was tipped off to another tree that's actually older than that one, and the grounds team have gone to great lengths to preserve it. Metal struts holding it up because it's one of the oldest trees in Northamptonshire. Whether people are attracted to work here because of friends or relatives, others have had good experience of being here. They come to be part of that community. I was a nurse. I graduated in 1998 and then moved to England to actually do a midwifery degree. And the plan was to become a midwife and then move back to Canada, which was in very high demand at the time. It didn't actually work out like that, though. I ended up having a bit of a career change. Everyone says, so you trained as a nurse, how did you get into comms? I think there's a lot of transferable skills, communication skills, obviously. Very important, of course, in the nursing industry. On the degree, you learn how to interact with all sorts of different people. The consideration and attention to detail, planning, all sorts of things are really, really important as a nurse. So yes, transferable skills. I don't think it was that wild a move, so I ended up, are we just wondering, or do you want me to lead the way? I've never been this way before, though. I've always been more career focused, moved around every 2 or 3 years, mostly the Midlands and as down south as Hemel Hempstead or High Wycombe. But yes, very career driven, which sort of ended in March 2016. I took redundancy from the airline I was working for, but actually, I know redundancy can be a terrible experience for some people, but for me it was just the right time. I walked out with a real opportunity to sit back, do some really important things I needed to do, and refocus on what I was paying, attention to. I was doing long hours, often 6:30 in the morning, and not getting back till late. I hardly saw my husband, and we have animals and things. Didn't feel as if I was doing things particularly well, and this gave me a chance to refocus and do what I really wanted to do. So in the end, I had some time off. I got to do some amazing things, lots of travelling. I got to spend 4 weeks in Canada and to focus on my family, my grandmother, who is still in the UK. And it was just at, a point that she was being moved into a nursing home from the house that she had lived in for nearly 70 years. It was just so important for me at the time to focus on that. And when this job was advertised, I kind of thought I talked about getting into some sort of medical again and to use my knowledge I had from nursing, and this just seemed like a great opportunity. I understand the complexity of mental health, and I understand some of the treatment and drugs and therapies. I didn't practice mental health nursing. I did a 6-month rotation as part of my degree, but that was enough to know that mental health nursing just wasn't for me. But I gained enough knowledge to really take my hat off in respect, really, because it's incredibly challenging, and it really does take a specific kind of person to do it. And to my own credit, I knew I wasn't that kind of person. So I actually went into children and maternity nursing. And it felt more natural for me to take care of children than it did any other patient group. I'd like to think I can bring that knowledge, to this role. My grandma and both my parents were from Manchester. My daddy's from Salem and my mum from Wythenshawe. Wythenshawe? That's a coincidence. I know Sale too. I used to work there. Where in Wythenshawe are you from? So, off Brownley Road, Sharston. Oh God, I know Sharston really well. Not the Bench Hill side, but the other side of Brownley Road. Sharston Baths. Yeah, been there as a child, swimming many times. Yep, a small world, hey? What school did they go to? My mum went to Brownley Road. It's been knocked down now. Yeah, I know. I went there too. But when it changed its name to South Manchester High School. So here's Brownley Road, there's Ur Road, and Civic's over there. So there's Simon's Way, there's Ollie Edge, and I grew up just there. There's the park. So I grew up there on Dunstall, where my family still live, and my brothers too. Sharston Bath was just over there. I think my aunt went to Crossacres. Ah, that's where I went too. How funny. Anyway, a small world, eh? I like that. A real connection. I have real fond memories of Wythenshawe and that area. One of my horses is a gypsy horse. And my uncle always says he looks like he should be pulling the rag and bone wagon. So every time my uncle sees him, he goes, rag and bone, rag and bone. I remember I came to Manchester as a kid on holiday, and it wasn't long after my grandfather had passed away, and my grandmother was always looking for a granddad. So there I was, 5 years old, looking for a granddad for me grandma. And the rag and bone man came along. I followed him because he had a horse, and also because me grandma needed a granddad. and I got lost. I ended up at Civic. It's easily done in Wythenshawe. It's like a rabbit warren. I know, it's easily done. And I wasn't looking where I was going, just following the rag and bone man and the horse. And I ended up at the police station at Civic. A lost Canadian child of 5 years old, lost in Wythenshawe. So how old are you? I'm 42. Well, I'm 44. So he would have been going around Wythenshawe at the same time. At the same age, eh? I go between Northampton and Manchester a lot. I moved to Manchester when I first came over from Canada. The initial reason I came over was because, my other grandfather was ill and he didn't want to go in a nursing home. And I was a nurse, so it made sense that I came and, took care of him. So I moved over, and after he passed away, my aunt and uncle and my cousins invited me down to Northampton. They'd moved down here from Peel Hall, and I moved down. Northampton just felt a bit like home. Northamptonshire, as a county to me, I always describe it as what people imagine England to be. Little villages, rolling hills, and church steeples. Most of my visits as a kid was to Manchester. I've heard all sorts of great stories and have had a few meetings up at Priory Cottage with the physical health team and involving the Walk Further, Walk Faster campaigns that we do. And they are absolutely desperate for patients and staff to be, more active and really trying to encourage these walks and talk sort of events. Sometimes, obviously, when the weather is a little bit better, me and my team do walking meetings and we do one-on-ones every week. So you don't have to be tied to your desk, you've got 160 acres of grounds to walk around, and seeing buildings like this, it's absolutely beautiful. So that's one of the oldest trees in Northamptonshire apparently, but I have to clarify that with our estates team. Just the work that's gone through preserving the tree, to keep it from collapsing. And going back to the walks, I think it allows for more creative thinking, a bit more productivity, and you don't always have to write things down. And I think, when you've got all these grounds, then you don't necessarily need to be tied to your desk. Obviously there's important things that need to be done, and so long as those things are getting done, then you should be out exploring and taking advantage of this, because there are not many places in the UK that have got these sorts of facilities to all enjoy. I think they are being used, and one of the things that really makes me quite happy is on a lovely spring or summer's day, you can notice that, many more people saying, let's get out for a walk as a team or with patients round the grounds. And the activity level around the site really picks up. And it's lovely to see, because it then feels more like a community. And when it's like this, a bit more like chilly, then you don't see as many people. This is a great period in the year that I've been here for trying new things at St Andrews. I guess it's the way of people when you've been somewhere for, say, 20 years, that the automatic response might be, well, we haven't done that before. Why would we do it that way? But then, why not? Let's try it and see if it works. So the football partnership, for example, we have with Northampton Town is one that works really well. And then thinking about how patients can then leave the building, how they might engage with it and do the coaching on the inside, for example. We've got the facilities, so why wouldn't we allow the patients? We are doing more media now, and we had a person on TV recently talking about the football partnership. It's so important, regards the public's interest in engaging in mental health. Everybody has an opinion on how NHS money is spent, and everybody knows somebody who has had a mental health issue. That doesn't necessarily mean they've required secure care, but it does impact on the communities that we live in. So there's no better opportunity for St Andrews to be on the conversation and using the collection of expertise that we have. Their voices should be heard. Nothing we do here is secret, and we do some really great work. Look, a monkey puzzle tree. I never knew we had a monkey puzzle tree. Apparently you can eat the nuts when it creates pine cones. Apparently they're quite sweet. I've never tried it though. This bit here belongs to estates and facilities for storage. What they do is amazing. They've really kept the grounds well. It's such a joy and I find it inspiring. I have great pride in what happens here because I get to hear about case studies and the awards that we win, and just really hopeful of how that filters down and has an incredible impact on patients' lives. You do forget that what we do every day does make a difference. I love the spirit of this place, and it does feel like a community in an often, incredibly difficult and challenging work environment. So I'm a Baptist minister, and I ministered at 4 different churches over a 30-year period. And the way it works is you get called by a church, so you don't know where you're going to live. I've lived in London and Manchester and Yorkshire. And my wife trained to be a minister, and we decided to go where she was called. And she was called to Northampton, which oddly enough I've lived in twice before. I grew up in Northampton, and my first church was in Northampton, so it was a sort of coming home, but I didn't know what I was going to do here. And my wife was going to be the minister, and I had to find something to do. And I saw an advert for a job at St Andrews as a chaplain, and I thought, transferable skills, I can do that. So I applied. I never expected to become a chaplain. It didn't appeal to me, but actually it's been wonderful. And I've been here 5 years now in this amazing environment. It's just absolutely wonderful. And this whole question, if you take faith away from the church, out of the church, then what does it mean? What is spirituality? I can't give you a full answer yet, but it's the best question I've lived with. It's really fascinating. And that's what I do here. I visit patients, do services, and I wrestle with this question of, people whom life has gone very wrong, who end up as a patient here. What can we all learn about life, from the questions that are lived out and asked here. My time is mostly spent on the wards, I think, and I'm regularly in the chapel too, which have a team, so I don't do every Sunday. I do many Sundays, and other days I do a choir that meets up on a Wednesday. But mostly I go onto the wards and find patients and just have conversations. I'm just there to talk to, really. Everybody else has some agenda, and they are offering a therapy, or they're trying to encourage patients to interact, to tackle difficult behaviours, all that sort of thing. And I haven't. So I'm just there really to listen and to get to know people. I'm somebody it's safe to talk to. I won't go writing it in their notes or anything. And I'm something to do with God, whatever you understand by that. So for some people, that puts me in a category. It means that talking to me is talking to somebody who deals with death and the big questions of life. I think it's a problem for all people. We are all human beings, but being is very difficult. And what really are we? Who are we? What is life for? What terrible regrets might you have? What will you be proud of? Those sorts of questions, I think, are problematic. I actually think that most patients here are more creative than most people because they are thinking at that level. A lot of them, the wheels have come off in various ways, and they are picking the pieces up. Shall we go inside? Well, I like it on a winter's evening when just a bit of sunlight comes in, like in the front there. It's a funny building because it's 150 years old, but it's in a style that's 900 years old, the Gothic revival, which I thoroughly disapprove of, really. I'm sure it has a rationale that you can approve of, but it bothers me to see the church, tied to the past in that way. I feel like we should walk towards William Wake House next, being at the heart of the wards. The chapel's a safe place, a calm and welcoming space, I think, for me, although it has these strange, very churchy connotations. This isn't a churchy place. Nonetheless, it does offer a sort of calm centre, I think. People respond to the atmosphere when they go in. Something restful and still about it, which the wards are not. The wards are often very unsettled. Everybody has a bedroom, normally with an ensuite bathroom, and you would have a key to it, and you can close the door, and there's a big communal area. It must be a strange way to live, really. You've got some freedom in your room to put up pictures and have music, that you want. But apart from that, you are with the same 15 people that you find yourself with. You haven't chosen them. And they're not necessarily going to be your best friends. You can get to your room, but other than that, it's not an easily escape to kind of place. You don't get out of the building very often. I don't do walks with them, but sometimes the staff do. So this is William Wake House. It's a medium, secure building with 8 wards, all identical. And they decided to do it in a mock classical style, and matches in style with the original old building. For me, it looks a bit like something from Whitehall, a central London kind of place. It's certainly not homely, is it? And the corridors are enormous. Everything is big. It feels like it's been designed for a species slightly larger than us Homo sapiens. Which is good in some ways. There is a lot of space, a lot of breathing space, and that's important. And it's all beige, the carpets, the doors. Everything is a shade of light brown. And you go in the wards, though, and it's full of people, and every one of them has a unique, fascinating story. I only know some of them, but they come alive when you get to know them and discover their complexities, the richness of every person's story. The building doesn't really matter so much, really. When I first started working here, I was quite scared of the wards and the patients, and this building really didn't help. It's quite intimidating. I've been here 5.5 years, and if you were a family member visiting your sister or your son, it must have quite an effect on you. It has a real sense of prestige, and maybe spent more money than they had to. It feels very aspirational. St Andrew's was a private psychiatric hospital for the wealthy for quite a long time, especially from the First World War to the 1990s, or something like that. It was very wealthy people coming here, and they had to come here. And the hospital at one point had a fleet of Rolls Royces to move them around in, for when they wanted to go somewhere. It's not like that now, though. It's all national health funded, but we seem to still have the trappings of this other world. Round the corner is Fitzroy, which is a new block where the adolescents are. And for example, the ward there, rather than being named after Northampton dignitaries, they're names that the patients thought of, called things like bracken and moss and rural things, and the building is entirely different in style. In some ways more functional and more playful, actually. It's quite a nice building with pictures and colours and things. We can go and have a look at the entrance lobby at least. In the back of my mind is that we've locked people up for decades, and there's a big moral question there that should we be doing that, and are we doing it with the right people? So we happen to have this legacy from the past, and we're using it to do the things we think are important. So in William Waite there is somebody who is responsible for the arts there and granted to redecorate it and putting up artworks that's much less corporate than the stuff that was there before. It's constantly reinventing itself, and that's the nature of hospitals and mental health care, really. Some people are here because they are considered dangerous. Other people are here because they are a danger to themselves, and such terrible things have happened to them in many cases. And they really do need help and put their lives back together to find any confidence. So we are dealing with tough stuff. And one of the places where society puts its major casualties, for those that are struggling to be integrated, what do you expect a place like that to be like? It's a place of healing, and a lot of that does happen for hope and understanding. I think for most patients here, this process of walking and talking would be extremely beneficial. Others might benefit from, being more hands-on with the process. There are many, though, I think, where conversation and self-reflection is really good for them. This is people's home for some years. And I often think about parents dropping their children here and that idea of entrusting a place. And I suppose I have some of the same feelings about these buildings as I do about schools and what it's like when you go back to your old school. In Northampton, where I live, it's actually opposite my old junior school. For me, in this building, somebody's thought about the patient's connection with the landscape here. And that's important, I think. So, on this site alone, we have some 600 patients and over 800 across all sites. I have quite a few patients in the Malcolm Arnold building, which used to be where the adolescents used to go. And some of the men's wards are now there. It's named after the composer who was a patient here. He wrote the score for Bridge Over the River Kwai, and the poet John Clare walked up the Great North Road, which is the A1 now, to Peterborough, without any food or money. Somebody gave him a beer at some point that restored him a bit. He really was in a bad way. He wrote I Am Here, and he'd leave the poems around, bits of poems on scraps of paper. He'd go off to lunch or something and just abandon them, and he never revised them, but the superintendent at the time used to collect them and look after them. Otherwise, we might not have them now. These grounds are amazing. We have some wonderful trees, and the avenue of lime trees we can walk along. Somebody calculated recently that doctors spend 20% of their time walking from building to building and suggested we should have electric buggies so they could get more quickly. The walks are a nice part of the day, though, and as you reflect on what you've just done, certainly the conversation I have had, it's about whatever it's about, and I reflect afterwards that it wasn't really about that at all. A patient was, for example, talking about World War II aircraft or something like that, but actually you realise afterwards that they're anxious about something, and that's what the conversation was really about. And without the walk, we would probably miss that. On the continent, lime trees are the big deal. There's lots of poems and songs about the linden tree, in the same way that an oak tree is here. They are often a sort of meeting place for a village who would assemble there, or you would start your journey from the lime tree. Or I'll meet you in 10 years' time at the lime tree. Doesn't have the same association here in the UK, really. It will probably take quite a few decades for this to look grand, When I started work here, I used to go out of my way to do exploratory walks, but now I just walk this way more purposefully. There's a pond over there, and over there's the orchard. So there's the roar of the A45. The trees have been planted in groups, the evergreens and so on. It has been designed well. It's been quite a while since I've been down to the orchard. When I came here, it was just cut grass mainly, But now they've planted wild grasses and it's great to see great waves of colour here. It's funny that when I started work here, I was so enamoured with the grounds, and I did take time to wander them occasionally. And now I don't, but this is a great reason to walk them again. The trees are just magnificent. They look gorgeous at the moment. I feel these walks are not a million miles away than what chaplains do. Listening and getting to know people's stories, bringing listening skills, and that your story is different depending on who you tell it to, and we are all constantly interpreting each other and reflecting that back, and that idea that we see ourselves through each other, reflecting on ourselves. I never go in this bit. This walk has sent me into a reflective place. It's nice to be around the place and reflect on what it means to me to work here. And it's important to reflect on that, as in the end it's me that I'm offering to the patients with all my stories, and to hear the patient's stories. There's a patient that's leaving on Thursday that's been here for all the time I've been here, and I'm going tomorrow to give him a farewell visit. I will miss him. A really interesting guy. He's been in hospital and prison for 45 years. And I often wonder if he should be here. But that's not the level I operate on here.